The river's witness, a tale of water, justice, and redemption the California sun didn't forgive. It accused, convicted, and executed all in the same scorching breath. Marcus Brennan saw her from the ridge above Tehachapi, past a dark shape swaying beneath the twisted branches of an ancient valley oak. At first, he thought it was a deer carcass, strung up by hunters, but deer didn't wear buckskin dresses. Deer didn't have long black hair tangled with dust and despair, as his horse picked its way down the rocky slope. The shape resolved into horror. A young native woman hung upside down by her left ankle, rope biting deep into flesh already swollen and purple. Her arms dangled limply, fingers nearly brushing the baked earth. Blood had pooled in her head, turning her face a terrible shade of crimson black. Her dress had been shredded whether by wind, animals, or deliberate cruelty. Marcus couldn't tell. She'd been here a while, hours, maybe a full day. Marcus was 51 years old, a former surveyor who'd spent the last decade mapping land for wealthy men who wanted to know exactly where their empires ended and other people's lives began. He'd learned to keep his head down, his compass accurate, and his opinions to himself. That was how you survived in California during the water wars. You did your job. You took your pay. You didn't ask why certain boundaries kept shifting west, always onto land that had belonged to someone else first. He pulled his horse to a stop 15 feet away, studying the scene with the careful eye of a man who'd surveyed too many crime scenes disguised as accidents. The woman stirred. Just slightly a tremor that ran through her suspended body like electricity through a wire. Then she spoke, her voice barely more than a rasp. "Please, don't look at me like that." Marcus blinked, confused. "Like what?" "Like I'm..." She struggled for breath, each word costing her. "Like I'm displayed. I can feel your eyes. My dress is torn. I'm hanging exposed. Please, just look away or cut me down. Don't just stare." The shame in her voice hit Marcus harder than any bullet ever had. He'd been so focused on the horror of her situation that he hadn't considered the violation of her dignity. Hanging upside down, dress torn, unable to cover herself, unable to control who saw her in this position of ultimate helplessness. "I'm sorry," Marcus said, and meant it. He immediately turned his gaze away, focusing on the rope instead of the woman. "I'm going to cut you down now. I'm not here to... I'm just going to help." He dismounted, pulled his surveyor's knife sharp enough to cut through hemp, measuring rope, and approached the tree. Still keeping his eyes averted from her exposed body, he reached up and began sawing through the rope binding her ankle. "This is going to hurt when you drop," he warned. "I'll catch you," but the blood rushing back. "Just cut it," she gasped. "Please." The rope snapped. She fell. Marcus caught her, immediately wrapping his coat around her torn dress before lowering her gently to the ground. She was lighter than she should have been. Days without food or water had left her skeletal. He turned his back to give her privacy while she adjusted the coat, covering herself. Only when she said "okay" did he turn around, up close. Even through the swelling and bruising, he could see she was young, maybe 25. With intelligent eyes that held more fury than fear. War paint had been smeared across her face, then mostly washed away by sweat and tears. Chumash, Marcus guessed, though he'd never been good at tribal identification. "What's your name?" he asked, offering his canteen. She drank desperately, water spilling down her chin. When she finally pulled the canteen away, she said, "Lucia." Lucia Morales. The Spanish surname surprised him. Mixed heritage, then, like so many people in California, caught between worlds, claimed by neither, exploited by both. "Who did this to you?" "Maxwell Kerr." The name landed like a stone in Marcus's gut. Of course, it was Kerr, the biggest landowner in Kern County. The man whose property Marcus had been surveying for the past 2 years. The man who paid Marcus's salary. Why? "Because I wouldn't sign." Lucia's voice was steadier now, gaining strength with each breath. "Because my father left me land with water rights. Because Kerr wants the San Joaquin River diverted to his property. And my signature was the last one he needed." She pulled something from inside her dress, a folded piece of oilcloth, stained with blood and sweat. Inside was a document, official-looking, with Spanish land grant seals. "This deed is older than California statehood," she said, "older than American law. It guarantees my people access to the river in perpetuity. Kerr's been buying up everyone else's rights, but mine he can't buy because they can't be sold. They're tribal, held in trust. So he decided to hang you until you changed your mind. He decided to make an example, to show everyone else what happens when you stand between Maxwell Kerr and water." She met Marcus's eyes, and he saw the calculation there. "You work for him, don't you? I've seen you surveying his northern boundary." Marcus's throat went dry. "Yes, then you should leave me here. Going back to Kerr with me alive would be complicated for you." She was giving him an out. A chance to walk away, claim he'd seen nothing, collect his pay and keep his comfortable life intact. Marcus thought about his daughter, dead 3 years now from cholera, thought about the last thing she'd said before the fever took her. "Promise me you'll do good things. Papa, promise me you'll be brave." He'd promised. Then spent 3 years surveying land for men who stole it. "Where's your land?" he asked. 10 miles north. Along the Kern River, where it meets the valley floor. Can you ride?" Lucia's eyes widened. "You're not? Can you ride?" Marcus repeated, already leading his horse over. "Because we need to move fast. Kerr's men will come back to check if you're dead yet, and when they find you gone, they'll come hunting." "Why are you doing this? You'll lose everything. Kerr will make sure you never work again." Marcus helped her onto the horse, wincing at how she bit back a scream as blood rushed back into her tortured leg. "Because 3 years ago I made a promise to someone I loved," he said, "and I'm tired of breaking it." He swung up behind her, keeping her steady with one arm. As they rode away from the hanging tree, Marcus looked back once. The rope still swayed in the hot wind. Empty now, but somehow still menacing. A reminder that in California's Central Valley, water was worth more than life, and men like Maxwell Kerr had plenty of rope. Lucia's land was a miracle in the middle of drought. While everything around it had been baked to dust and desperation, her 500 acres remained stubbornly green. Not lush. California had forgotten lush years ago, but alive. Cottonwoods still had leaves. The grass was yellow instead of dead, and running through the center of it all, the Kern River flowed with the steady determination of water that remembered its ancient course. Marcus helped Lucia down from the horse and into a small adobe house that looked like it had been standing since before the United States existed. Inside was cool and dark, smelling of sage and old wood smoke. "My father built this," Lucia said, lowering herself carefully onto a bed of woven reeds. "Before they made him disappear, Kerr killed him. No, something worse. Made him legally dead, forged documents saying he'd sold the land and moved to Mexico. By the time anyone realized the signatures were fake, my father was actually dead. Died in a work camp in the Sierras, according to a priest who buried him." Marcus had seen it before. The legal murder of inconvenient people, done with paperwork and patience. Instead of bullets, cleaner, harder to prosecute. He began treating her wounds with supplies from her shelves. Herbs he didn't recognize but that Lucia directed him toward. As he worked, she talked. The Kern River used to run free from the Sierras all the way to Tulare Lake. 50 miles of water, feeding everything in between. Then the landowners came, started building diversions. Private canals. They called it irrigation, called it progress. She gestured toward a map on the wall hand-drawn showing the river's natural course in blue, and the diversions in red. The red lines looked like veins draining a body. Now they want to build the Big Ditcher Canal that'll divert 90% of the river to Kerr's land and his consortium. Everyone else dries up and dies. The native villages, the small farmers, the Mexican homesteaders, all gone. But your deed blocks it. My deed means the river has to flow through my land unobstructed. I can use what I need, but I can't dam it or divert it away from downstream users. It's un old Spanish conceptegua, is vida. Water is life, and life can't be owned. Marcus studied the map. If Kerr can't get your signature, He'll just take the land another way. He tried, offered to buy it for 10 times its value. When I refused, he tried intimidation. Hired men trampled my crops, poisoned my well, burned my barn. She touched her ankle, still swollen and dark. Then he moved to torture. Why not go to the law? Lucia laughed a bitter sound. The law? The sheriff is Kerr's cousin. The judge drinks Kerr's whiskey every Saturday. The newspaper editor takes Kerr's money to run stories about water development and modernizing California. There is no law here. Only power. Marcus knew she was right. He'd watched it happen across California, the slow transformation of frontier justice into corporate feudalism. The men with money made the rules, and the rules always favored more money. Then what do we do? Lucia looked at him sharply. There is no we. You helped me, I'm grateful. But this isn't your fight. Go back to your life before Kerr realizes you're involved. I'm already involved. The moment I cut that rope, Marcus sat down across from her. And I'm tired of pretending I don't see what's happening. I've been surveying land for thieves for 2 years, making their theft look legal by mapping it accurately. So what, you're going to make a stand now? One old surveyor against Maxwell Kerr and his private army? No, I'm going to do what I do best. Marcus pulled out his surveying tools, compass, measuring chain, notebooks filled with precise measurements and legal descriptions. I'm going to prove that Kerr's been lying about property lines for years, show that half his legally purchased land was actually stolen through fraudulent surveys. Lucia's eyes narrowed. You can prove that? I've been documenting it without even realizing. Every survey I did, I kept duplicate records, accurate ones, not the ones Kerr filed with the county. I've got 2 years of evidence showing systematic fraud. That's not enough. You said it yourself, the law here works for him. The law here does, but there's a state land commission in Sacramento, and a federal surveyor general in San Francisco. Both of them hate corruption that makes them look incompetent. Marcus smiled grimly. Kerr's been making them look very incompetent. For the first time since he'd found her hanging, Lucia smiled. You might be crazier than I am. Probably. But crazy's all we've got. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky the color of old blood. And in the distance, Marcus heard the sound he'd been dreading, hoofbeats. Multiple horses, coming fast. Kerr's men had found them. They came at dusk, 8 riders, spread in a loose line, rifles across their saddles. Not attacking yet. Just surrounding, making their presence felt. Marcus recognized the leader, Garrett Stone, Kerr's enforcer. A man who'd killed 3 people Marcus knew about, and probably a dozen more he didn't. Stone made problems disappear. And he did it with just enough legal veneer that sheriffs could look the other way. Brennan, Stone's voice carried across the evening air. Kerr wants his surveyor back. Says you took something that belongs to him. Marcus stood on Lucia's porch, rifle in hand, but not raised. Lucia doesn't belong to anyone. Kerr says she does. Says she signed a contract to marry his son, which makes her family property until the wedding, or she breaks contract. Lucia appeared beside Marcus, leaning on a makeshift crutch. I signed nothing. That contract is forged, just like everything else Kerr touches. Don't matter what you say, girl. Kerr's got documents signed and witnessed. You're coming back to face breach of contract. And Brennan's coming back to face kidnapping charges. The elegant cruelty of it struck Marcus immediately. Kerr had manufactured a legal justification for torture. If Lucia was contracted to marry his son, then her refusal became a breach of contract, and hanging her became domestic discipline rather than attempted murder. And Marcus, by cutting her down, had committed kidnapping. In California's courts it would probably stick. We're not coming. Marcus shouted. Leave now, and no one gets hurt. Stone laughed. Old man, there's 8 of us, and 1 of you. Even if the girl could shoot, you're outgunned 4 to 1. 3 to 1. A new voice called Dot from the cottonwoods along the river. A man emerged, elderly native, carrying a rifle that looked older than he did. Then another figure appeared. And another. Within minutes, a dozen men and women had materialized from the landscape. All armed, all taking positions around Lucia's property. "Make that 1-to-1, Lucia said quietly. "My people have been watching this land since my father died, waiting to see if Kerr would make his move." Stone's confidence wavered. He hadn't expected resistance. Hadn't expected the local tribes to risk everything for one woman's land. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," Stone shouted. "Kerr owns the water rights. He owns the land. He owns nothing here." The elderly man who'd emerged first stepped forward. His voice was strong despite his age. "I am Joseph Morales. Lucia is my niece. This land has been in our family for 160 years. We will not give it to thieves. Then you'll die for it." Stone raised his rifle. The shot that rang out didn't come from Stone. It came from the roof of Lucia's house, where another figure had appeared, a white man in his 30s, wearing a surveyor's vest and holding a Winchester. "Next one goes through your hat, Stone," the man shouted. After that, I aim lower. Marcus stared. Thomas Palmer, his former apprentice, grinned. "Heard you finally grew a spine, Marcus. Figured I'd come watch." "How did you word travels fast when Maxwell Kerr's favorite surveyor goes rogue? Half the surveyors in California have been waiting for someone to stand up to that bastard. We've all got stories about fraudulent maps and cooked surveys." Thomas fired again, deliberately kicking up dust at Stone's horse's feet. "Now, you gentlemen can leave peacefully, or we can have a real shooting war. Your choice." Stone looked around, at the armed Chumash fighters, at the surveyors emerging from cover, at the increasingly poor odds. His men were hired guns, not martyrs. They fought for money, not principle. "This isn't over," Stone shouted, already backing his horse away. "Kerr will bring the army if he has to. This land will be his. Tell Kerr to bring his lawyers to—" Marcus shouted back. "Because I've got 2 years of evidence showing he's been stealing land through survey fraud, and copies are already on their way to Sacramento." That stopped Stone cold. "You're bluffing, am I? Ask Kerr about the Richardson survey in 67, or the Dominguez survey in 68, or the 15 other surveys where his property lines mysteriously moved west after I filed my reports." Marcus smiled. "I kept duplicates of everything, Stone. Every fraudulent map, every forged boundary marker, every bribe offered and accepted. You're a dead man, Brennan, probably. But I'll die having done one good thing. Can you say the same?" Stone spat in the dust, wheeled his horse, and rode off. His men followed, looking relieved to escape without bloodshed. When they were gone, Lucia turned to Marcus. "Did you really send copies to Sacramento?" Thomas did. 2 days ago. Before I even found you. I'd decided I was done working for Kerr. Finding you hanging just accelerated things." Joseph Morales approached, studying Marcus with eyes that had seen too many white men promise help and deliver betrayal. Why throw away your life for strangers?" Marcus thought about his daughter, about the promise he'd made, about the man he'd been versus the man he wanted to be before he died. "Because water should flow free," he said simply. "Because some things are worth dying for. And because I'm tired of being a man who measures other people's stolen land and calls it honest work." Joseph nodded slowly, then extended his hand. "Then you are welcome here. For as long as the river flows." Marcus shook it, feeling something settle in his chest. Not peace, not yet. But the possibility of peace. The chance to sleep without shame. That night, they built fires and posted guards. Kerr would come again, maybe with more men, maybe with false legal papers, maybe with the actual army. But tonight, the river still flowed free, and Marcus Brennan finally felt like he was standing on the right side of it. Maxwell. Kerr didn't send gunmen, he sent lawyers. They arrived 3 days later, a delegation of men in expensive suits, carrying leather cases filled with documents. At their head was Silas Whitmore, the most feared land attorney in California. A man who'd legally stolen more acres than most outlaws had physically occupied. They set up on the road, just outside Lucia's property line, where they couldn't be accused of trespassing. Then Whitmore shouted across the distance, "Miss Morales, I represent Mr. Maxwell Kerr. I have court orders for your immediate eviction and arrest. Please comply peacefully. Lucia, still recovering but able to walk with a cane now, shouted back, on what grounds? Breach of contract. Theft of water. And Whitmore consulted his papers, harboring a fugitive surveyor wanted for fraud and kidnapping. Marcus stepped forward. I'm the fugitive surveyor. And I'm not hiding. I'm right here, Mr. Brennan. You're named in a warrant issued by Judge Harrison. The charges are falsifying land surveys, accepting bribes, and aiding a known water thief. The elegant reversal was breathtaking. Kerr had taken every crime he'd committed and legally attributed it to Marcus and Lucia. In California's corrupt courts, where Kerr controlled the judges, these charges would stick. Those charges are lies, Marcus said. Then you'll have an opportunity to prove that in court, where you'll be represented by counsel and face a jury of your peers, a jury selected by Kerr, in a courthouse owned by Kerr, before a judge paid by Kerr. Whitmore smiled. Those are serious accusations, Mr. Brennan. Ones you'll need evidence to support. I have evidence. 2 years of accurate surveys showing every fraudulent boundary shift, Kerr ordered. Copies are already in Sacramento. The smile didn't waver. Conveniently, those same documents have been reviewed by the State Land Office and found to contain numerous errors. Your surveying license has been suspended pending investigation. Marcus felt ice water in his veins. Kerr had moved faster than he'd expected, had gotten to the State Land Office first, bribed or threatened the right people, poisoned the well before Marcus's evidence could even be examined. Then we'll go federal, Marcus said. The U.S. Surveyor General's office doesn't answer to Kerr. The U.S. Surveyor General is currently in Washington, D.C., investigating irregularities in Arizona land grants. He won't return for 6 months, by which time, Miss Morales's land will have been seized for unpaid taxes. What taxes? Lucia shouted. I pay every year. According to county records, you haven't paid property taxes since 1865. You now owe. Whitmore consulted his papers again. $4,300, plus interest and penalties. Total owed, $7,200. That's impossible. I have receipts. Not ones the county recognizes. The records show no payments received. Whitmore's smile was pure poison. But Mr. Kerr is generous. He's willing to forgive the debt in exchange for a quitclaim deed to the property. Simply sign, and this all goes away. Lucia looked at Marcus. In her eyes he saw the terrible realization Kerr had outmaneuvered them. Guns could be fought with guns, but lawyers, judges, and forged records, that was a war neither of them had weapons for. What if we had a witness? A new voice, from behind them. Everyone turned. An elderly man was walking toward them, white-haired, bent with age, but moving with purpose. He carried a leather satchel that looked as old as he did. Who are you? Whitmore demanded. Father Miguel Santos. I've been the priest at Mission San Fernando for 40 years. And I have records. He opened the satchel, pulled out a ledger. Tax receipts, paid to the county tax collector every year from 1850 to present. Each one signed and witnessed by myself as notary. He handed the ledger to Marcus, who flipped through it. Every page documented payment, with dates, amounts, and collector signatures, an unbroken chain of proof that Lucia had paid her taxes faithfully. These must be forgeries, Whitmore said, but his voice had lost its certainty. They're in the original ledger. In my hand, with tax collector seals from 27 years ago. Unless you're suggesting I forged documents with 2070-rolled ink and seals from collectors who've been dead for decades. Father Miguel smiled. I may be old, Mr. Whitmore, but I'm not that talented. The county records were altered, probably last month, when Mr. Kerr began his campaign. I suspected something like this might happen. That's why I kept my own copies. The priest looked at Lucia. Your father asked me to. Said powerful men would try to steal what they couldn't buy. Whitmore's confident mask was cracking. That doesn't address the other charges. Miss Morales still faces breach of contract. What contract? Another voice, this time from a young man approaching on horseback. He was well-dressed, handsome, and looked uncomfortable. I never proposed to Miss Morales. Never even met her. Whitmore paled. Mr. Kerr Jr., I'm tired of my father using my name for his schemes. The young man Maxwell Kerrs, he forged engagement papers without my knowledge or consent. I won't be part of it anymore. He handed Marcus a written statement, signed and notarized, declaring that no marriage contract had ever existed. Whitmore was scrambling now, flipping through his papers. There's still the matter of Mr. Brennan's fraudulent surveys. Fraudulent on whose order? Thomas Palmer emerged from the house carrying a wooden box. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all in Maxwell Kerr's handwriting, all ordering specific survey alterations, all promising payment for cooperative work. Kerr's correspondence file, Thomas explained. Turns out, his office clerk has a gambling problem. Sold us the files for $500. He grinned. Best money I ever spent. Whitmore looked at the stack of documents forming around him: tax receipts, marriage statement retractions, incriminating letters. His carefully constructed legal fortress was collapsing. This isn't over, he said finally. Mr. Kerr has resources you can't imagine. Allies in Sacramento and Washington. He will crush you, legally or otherwise. Maybe, Marcus said. But he'll have to do it in public now. With witnesses. With documentation. He can't make this disappear the way he's made other people disappear. Whitmore gathered his papers, climbed into his carriage, and left without another word. When he was gone, Lucia turned to Father Miguel. Why? Why risk yourself for us? Because your father was my friend. Because I've watched Kerr steal from too many people who had no voice to fight back. The old priest's eyes were fierce. And because I'm 83 years old. What's Kerr going to do? Kill me? I'm already dying. Cancer, 6 months, maybe a year. I'd rather spend it fighting evil than accommodating it. Marcus understood. The man had nothing to lose, which made him the most dangerous kind of witness. What happens now? Lucia asked. Now. Marcus looked at the river, still flowing free through her land. Now we fortify. Document everything. Send copies to every newspaper, every honest judge, every federal office we can find. Make this so public that Kerr can't act without everyone watching. And if he acts anyway, then we make him pay the highest price we can. Marcus met her eyes. I'm not promising we'll win, but I'm promising we'll make him bleed for every inch. Joseph Morales approached, studying Marcus with new respect. You fight like one of us now. Not with guns, with stubbornness. Marcus smiled. Sometimes, that's all you need. Just the refusal to stop fighting. That night, they celebrated not victory, but survival. The paper war wasn't over. But they'd won the first battle, and the Kern River kept flowing, indifferent to lawyers and landowners, following the ancient course it had carved when giants walked the earth and men were still learning to steal from each other. Maxwell Kerr made his final move on the 1st of September, when the drought was at its worst and tempers were at their highest. He didn't send lawyers this time, or gunmen, he sent the water itself. Marcus woke to shouting Lucia's voice, panicked, from outside. He grabbed his rifle and ran onto the porch to see what had changed. The river had stopped flowing, where the Kern had run steady for 100 miles. Now, there was only mud. Wet mud. Still, the river had only been stopped within the last few hours, but mud nonetheless. Upstream, Lucia said, pointing north. He's built a dam. He's holding the entire river. Marcus understood immediately. Kerr was using the drought as a weapon. Every farmer, rancher, and town downstream from Lucia's property would blame her for the river stopping. They'd demand she sign over her water rights. And if she didn't, they'd take them by force. It was brilliant, brutal, and perfectly legal. Kerr owned the land upstream. He could build whatever he wanted on it. How long until people start arriving? Marcus asked. Already here, Joseph Morales said grimly, pointing toward the road. A crowd was gathering, 50 people, maybe more, farmers with dry fields, ranchers with dying cattle, Townspeople with empty wells, all desperate, all angry, all looking at Lucia like she was the one stealing their water. "There's the water thief," someone shouted. "She's hoarding the river, keeping it for herself, while our children go thirsty." "It's not me," Lucia shouted back. "Kerr built a dam upstream. He's the one stopping the water." "Lies, we checked. There's no dam on Kerr's land." Marcus realized what Kerr had done. He'd built the dam on public land technically illegal, but hidden in a canyon where no one would see it. Then spread rumors that Lucia was hoarding water. The crowd didn't know about the dam. They only knew the river stopped at her property line. "We need to show them," Marcus said. "Take them to the dam. Prove Kerr's behind this." "It's 10 miles through rough country," Lucia said. "They'll never agree to go. They want blood now, not evidence later." The crowd was advancing, armed with tools, rocks, desperation. At their front was a man Marcus recognized, Sheriff Coleman, Kerr's cousin. "Miss Morales," Coleman shouted, "you're under arrest for water theft. Surrender now, or face the consequences." "I'm not stealing water. Kerr built a dam. If there's a dam, you built it. This is your property. You're responsible." The crowd surged forward. Marcus raised his rifle, not aiming, just displaying. "Stay back. This is private property. Your property is killing our children." A woman screamed. "My baby hasn't had clean water in 3 days." Marcus felt his resolve waver. These weren't hired guns or corrupt lawyers. They were desperate people, victims themselves, pointed at the wrong enemy by a master manipulator. "Listen to me," Marcus shouted. "Maxwell Kerr is playing you. He built a dam to frame Lucia. If you'll just ride upstream with me, more lies." Coleman drew his pistol. "Last warning. Surrender or die." Then the water came. It arrived like a flash flood, a wall of brown liquid 10 feet high, roaring down the dry riverbed with the fury of something that had been caged too long. The dam had broken, or been broken. The water surged through, washing away the mud, reclaiming its ancient course, and riding ahead of the flood, on horseback, was Maxwell Kerr Jr. He reached the crowd just as the water hit, his horse soaked and exhausted. "The dam," he gasped. "Father built a dam. I blew it up." The crowd turned, staring. "I couldn't let him do it anymore," Kerr Jr. continued, dismounting. "He was going to let you all kill her, blame her for his crimes. I found the dam, found the charges he'd planted to blow it after you'd killed Miss Morales. I set them off early." Sheriff Coleman paled. "You're lying. Your father wouldn't. My father has been stealing land for 20 years, and I've been pretending not to notice because it was easier than standing up to him." Kerr Jr. pulled out a document, construction plans for the dam, in Maxwell Kerr Sr.'s handwriting, with notes about creating a crisis and forcing sale. He planned all of it. The dam, the rumors, even my fake engagement to Miss Morales, that was to give him legal justification to torture her. The crowd's anger was shifting, redirecting toward its proper target. They'd been